Work, and today I'm really excited to talk about shadow work. And first off, we could do a million sessions on shadow work and still not exhaust everything unless you take that literal. If we literally were to do a million sessions, I think we would cover a lot. But it's just to say that we need more sessions than one to really get into depth with what shadow work is and how it works and why we need to do it. So, what I want to do today is really just make more of an introduction to it and then talk about why do we need to do this when it comes to the whole light casting aspect. And as you may recall, if you've been here, if you've watched the previous videos, for me, casting light onto the world, it's really about sourcing it from within and then just sharing that, like being the kind of light that lifts up other people, communities, having a positive impact on others simply through the energy that we exude. And it's about just doing ours to make this world a better place, to make our communities better places to be, to connect with people on deeper levels, and to just spread light and love and all of that, right? So, as I spoke about last time around healing energetic inflammation, it's not just about tapping into our light and then neglecting everything else and then pretend like, oh, we have to ignore sadness and anger and all of that. That's not about it at all. It's about how do we elevate the frequency with which we experience the full range of emotions. And one of the reasons that I really want to bring shadow work into this is because it is an incredibly powerful tool to do a full integration of self. So Carl Jung is the one who really coined the term shadows. And his deal was really about how do we integrate the whole self, not how do we show up as the positive mindset kind of person and then just try to ignore and to drown out all the other things that is part of who we are. It's more about how do we bring all of our different pieces into the full whole self and then work with the judgment that we really hold towards a lot of it. So, one thing that I find really interesting is that Carl Jung was talking about this back in the 1950s. It's like 75 years ago. He had this incredible insight. And still, there's so few people who actually know about it. I feel like this should be known by everyone. Now, if you may recall, if you've watched it, I did my TEDx on the importance, I included the importance of shadow work and that I use shadow work in a way to connect with our subconscious because we really want to figure out how do we get our conscious mind and our subconscious mind moving in the same direction so that we don't end up self-sabotaging, so we don't end up doing all of these things that we don't mean to do, but we end up doing, which blocks our progress. So when I first learned about shadow work, I had a lot of judgment, right? Listen, you don't know how much judgment you actually hold until you start working on your judgment. I had so much judgment towards myself, towards others, and I wasn't in contact with it, so I wasn't aware of it. I didn't consider myself a judgy person. I was so judgmental. Now, I got so off track saying that. I don't even remember where I was a moment ago. So we were talking about the conscious and the subconscious minds, and when I discovered shadow work, I thought that I already know this because I've already been doing personal development work, and I've already been doing the work of figuring out why am I programmed the way that I'm programmed and why are my thoughts the way that they are. And it was very much mindset work. So I would go back and I would look at why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking? Why am I responding the way that I'm responding? Why do I hold the beliefs? And I did less work on why do I feel the way that I feel? Because really we navigate life based on what we feel and less about what we think. We think we navigate life based on how we think, but what always ends up winning is how we feel. And so it's just so much more impactful to do the work of figuring out how come I'm holding this resistance? How come I'm scared of this? How come this makes me feel unsafe? Because a lot of especially as women, a lot of the work that we do, a lot of what drives us forward, and even more what holds us back is this sense of safety. And familiar is always safe, no matter how uncomfortable it is, right? Familiar is always safe. And that's one of the reasons that we really self-sabotage a lot, is to avoid stepping out of familiarity. We would rather subconsciously cause sabotage that keeps us from moving in the direction that we desire, so that we can stay in a familiar chaos or pain or toxicity, or just a horrible relationship as well. So now I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's step back to shadow work. When I was first introduced to shadow work, I really thought that it was just all of this stuff that I had already done, which was rooting back and figuring out, how did all of this program happen? Why am I thinking the way that I'm doing and navigating the way that I am? And then once you see it for what it really is, you can start working in a different direction. But shadow work is so much more than that. Shadow work isn't only figuring out, why am I being so judgmental? Why am I holding grief or shame or fear or guilt around this area? It's also about integrating that and accepting it. And I think that's really something that changed the game for me, when I realized that I could remove my judgment whenever I felt like there was something to feel guilty or shameful about. I could remove the judgment, I could understand the feeling, and I could integrate it, and I can be okay with the parts of me that I would usually not enjoy, that I would usually find unacceptable. And that really made a big shift for me, because I had spent so much time judging these versions of me. I had spent so much time thinking that, oh, I shouldn't feel or be like this, therefore I'm going to change it, and I'm going to reject the part of me that shows up like this. And then what that would do is just add a lot of internal resistance towards parts of me that were parts of me. And once I realized we all have things that we feel guilty or shameful about because we've been conditioned and raised to that. Once we realize that we all have sides of ourselves that we don't really want to look at, then it becomes more about, okay, there's nothing really wrong with me, but I haven't allowed myself to really spend time with this version of myself because I always just reject and reject. So the shadow work is really looking at, hello, anxiety, hello, fear, hello, all of these parts of me that I'm trying to get rid of all the time. Hello, guilt, hello, shame, hello, whatever it is, right, that I'm feeling bad about. Hello, the version of me that overeats and binge eats, right? I have that. Hello, the version of me that sometimes just has a really bad day and doesn't want to get out of bed, and then all of a sudden I go 3 weeks without going to the gym, which is like, that's not my identity, right? That is also my identity. Hello, version of me that has a weird relationship with money. Hello, the version of me that don't really like kids, right? I mean, I love children in limited amounts. I can be really excited about kids. I can find them incredibly cute. But there's also a part of me that gets stressed out, right? Having kids around, because I don't know what to do with them. Hello, that version of me that feels weird about not knowing what to do with the kids. Hello, the version of me that I used to drink a lot of alcohol, right? And I used to use alcohol as a way of distracting myself from the parts of myself that I didn't like. So the awkward introvertedness, not even, I don't want to use the word disgust. Sometimes, actually, a part of my life, I was really disgusted with myself. I disliked myself. I hated myself for a very long period of time. And there was so much judgment in that. There was so much of me judging me from the outside and thinking that I was so much more deserving of all of the judgment that other people would be, right? Hello, the version of me that is so self-obsessed, because I feel really... One thing I've noticed is the worse our mental and emotional health is, the more we self-obsess, right? Hello, that version of me. And then I would say hello, hello to all of these versions of me. And I'd be like, okay, so what do you have to say? Instead of trying to shut them out, and instead of trying to pushing them away, it'd be like, so I haven't listened to you for a while. What are you up to? What is the message that you have to share with me? And I think we all carry, a little toddler, we all carry a teenager, we all carry all of these versions of ourselves that we haven't connected to in a long time because we've been like, oh, but I'm not a kid anymore. And so therefore we push that part of us away. But I think you'll notice that the toddler, the teenager, the young, kind of doubtful on ourselves version of us, they're still there. They still exist as part of our identity. And they will pop up in different areas. So when I'm hungry, low energy, just not feeling physically well, my toddler lives beautifully in my body, right? It's like my adult filters are tuned down to a minimum. And it reminds me, I love this. There's this reel of this dad who's sitting on the front seat of his car and he's recording himself and his 2-year-old daughter. And then he's asking, are you hungry? And she's like, yeah. And then he says, so what do you want to eat? And then she just says, I don't want to tell you. And that's me. That's me in so many cases, especially when I'm just not feeling my best. This version of me, she lives, she flourishes, she thrives. And I will literally be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to tell you. I don't. And then, okay, just, go to bed and get some food, right? You need rest. Unfortunately, the adult version of me knows that. Adult me absolutely knows that other people don't deserve to be exposed to my toddler. But what I can do is that I can have a healthy conversation with my toddler and try to figure out, what is it that you want? And very often, this version of us just wants to be seen, right? And I think a lot of versions of us, a lot of parts of us is actually rooted in some sort of very young child. So very often the anxiety or the fear, these versions of us that we're like, I don't want to have anything to do with you because you freak me out and you make me really scared. And we're like trying to push them away. And what happens when you push away a toddler or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old? They're going to respond with, a tantrum. You're going to be like the kid in the supermarket that wants the chocolate and has a 5 p.m. energy dump, right? Slump or whatever you call it. And it's just a complete drop in energy. And all they want is to get out of the supermarket, but also they want to get out with all of the candy that they desire. And mom says no. And they're like, I want this right now. And then they throw a tantrum. That is our fears and our anxieties when we try to push them away, when we say, no, get away, I don't want to have anything to do with you. They will push back with that level of intensity. And so what really helps is instead saying, hello, fear, hello, anxiety, hello, this thing that's my self-sabotage. Hello, hi, how are you doing? So what do you want to share? And then just look at that version of us. And very often what I like to do is actually just ask questions, visualize a physical representation of this part of me. Just visualize that part of me and then ask, so what can I do for you today? What do you have on your mind? What do you want to share? What are you scared of? And a really impactful one is, what are you trying to protect us from? Because one thing about our subconscious mind, and a lot of these versions of us are rooted in our subconscious, right? The anxiety, the self-sabotage, the fears, it's very often rooted in our subconscious. And I don't know why I like to envision that at the back of my neck. It's like back here talking at me. What our subconscious really likes to do is keep us safe, right? That's how we kind of started the conversation. We want to stay safe. We want to stay alive. And when it comes to the subconscious is not a rational version of us. It is the one that's written by experience, unprocessed emotion, just feeling things, right? And then it responds to that, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with logic. The conscious mind is the logic version of us. So when the conscious mind steps in, the subconscious mind steps in, it's really often in order to protect us from something. So it protects us from pain, from shame, from fear, and from new things. The subconscious mind dislikes anything new. So unless you're the kind of person, and there are some cases where you would see that it's the other way around, that the subconscious mind cannot stand being the same, but that's very often if you've been raised in an environment where you constantly was just met with new things and new people, all of a sudden just staying the same feels unsafe. But that's I would say that's quite rare compared. The norm is really that people dislike change because it's new, it's scary, we don't know what's out there. And when we don't know what's out there, whenever we want to change something, do something new, and we start moving in a different direction, the subconscious mind is going to come in and say, hello, we're not going there. Let's not do that. Let's add feelings of fear and anxiety and resistance so that we avoid going in that direction, because that direction is new and it's scary, and we don't know if we're going to die out there, right? So our subconscious mind is really often about protecting us. And as much as it's very evident when it comes to change, it's very evident when it comes to, okay, we're doing new things, resistance comes, this feels very uncomfortable. And then the logical mind, it responds to the discomfort, and then it says, let's look at all the reasons why this would be uncomfortable. It's my intuition saying no. Probably I should not be going in this direction. Probably, I said I wanted it, but I actually don't want it. And all of this very uncomfortable fear is really stopping me from doing that. And then we use the logical mind to explain this is why you are not doing it. All right, actually, this is wrong timing. I think it's better if we wait until later. You know what? My cousin just did this, and it went really bad for him. So let's not do that. Let's make sure that we do something that's more familiar. Let's stay here. And then we think, because our conscious mind came up with all of the logical reasons, we think that we are in control of the decision, but it's really the subconscious mind that triggered this change in the resistance to change, or the resistance to whatever it is in the first place. So very often we see that we desire change, we want to do something different, and then the subconscious mind kicks in, and then the rational mind responds, and now we think we're in control, we're not, that's not us, right? That's not the conscious mind. Just to say that the subconscious mind is very much a part of us. But when they clash, we think we're in control with our conscious mind, but what we're actually just doing is responding to the resistance and to the fear and to all of this. So what we want to do, and since I deal with transformational leadership, it's about change, it's about new things, it's about expansion, about growth, about moving in new directions. I deal with people who just have a lot of resistance towards it. And what I find is that once you understand why the resistance is there, once you welcome the resistance, say, okay, hello, resistance, what are you protecting me from? And the funny thing is, we will all have kind of different responses. So I like to ask, you can either visualize the part of you, you create this persona like I spoke about, you visualize that part of you and you just ask it, what are we scared of? What are we resistant to? What are you protecting me from? And what I see is that very often things come up for people where like, wow, I had no idea these things were related. I had no idea that this resistance came from that. But it totally makes sense when, and then they start tracking it back to whatever happened in whatever part of earlier in life, or whatever messages came through to you a lot when you were a kid, or whatever your third grade teacher told you. And it's really not always only in relation to our childhood. We like to make this about our childhood a lot, but we are being impacted throughout our entire lives. So you can experience something that impacted you in your teens, 20s, 30s, wherever in life. In your 40s, 50s, 60s, you can experience something that makes an imprint on your subconscious, and now your subconscious is going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And then whenever you feel that something is in whatever direction, and it might be completely unrelated. And I'm trying to do this, then all of a sudden you figure out that your resistance towards doing this in either your relationship or your career has something to do with a health scare that you had 20 years ago, something in that sort. Something, that something even that happened to a friend of yours, but that it just impacted you a lot. Throughout our entire lives, we are putting code into our programming, and this code is going to stay with us until we deal with it. So shadow work is really looking at welcoming in all of the fear, all of the shame, all of the guilt, all of the self-sabotage, all of the anxiety, all of these things that are usually very problematic to us and that we just want to reject and refuse. And then we look at, oh, wow, I see you. I really see you. And yes, you're part of me too. And that is really hard work to do when we have been raised believing that it's wrong for us to be all of these things. There's such a resistance to doing integration work when you're like, oh no, I cannot allow this part to be part of me because I hated when my mom did that. Well, guess what? It's totally part of you. That programming, we're like, no, I hate it. Very often when we hate something in other people, it's because it's an unintegrated part of ourselves that we're refusing to look at, but it's right there. And that is the whole reason that you're hating that person and you don't understand why you hate them so much. There's something about them that you're refusing to look at within yourself. That's very often the case. Not always, very often the case. So the shadow work is noticing when are all of these uncomfortable feelings coming up, and how can we have good conversation with it? How can we welcome it into our lives? How can we look at it with more just objective, curious glasses instead of judging it and trying to push it away? And there's one thing, I'm reading this book by Debbie Ford, I keep thinking I have like a shadow here, sorry. There's a book by a woman called Debbie Ford called the dark side of the LightCasters. And she speaks about shadow work. And one of the things that she did as an exercise was to look at every single person and type of person that she judged throughout time. She would look at them and then she would think, could I have become this person if my programming was different? And that means looking at people that have hurt us, people that we dislike, people that are just like we have so much negativity towards them. And then we find compassion. This is actually really, really hard work. And you might ask, why would I want compassion for someone that hurt me? I would say because that helps you connect deeper with your light. It helps you heal your energetic inflammation, which is why we're here. It helps you. The more compassion you have for other people, the more you can also see the light in them. And the less you're going to judge them for all of the things that you would say, oh, they did this wrong. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. They're just so horrible in this and that way. And I have some people in my life that it is hard work to do that. They're not even in my life anymore. I let them go a long time ago, but I've carried on the anger towards them. And then what I do is try to figure out, how can I send this person love? How can I see their humanity? How can I look at them and understand where they came from? And just really do the work of thinking, if I had been programmed differently, could I have ended up like this person? And one thing that Debbie Ford says, she's gone really wild with this work. Well, not gone because she's passed away now, but the work that she did was even looking at, killers, rapists, pedophiles, like people that are just like, you cannot even begin to say, it feels wrong finding compassion for these people. And she would still do the work of figuring out, if I had had such a traumatic past where all of these things had happened, if I had found safety in pain, right? Because some of us, we find safety in pain, like toxic relationships, because it's a familiar type of relationship. That's the kind of relationship we grew up with. Maybe we had a really toxic relationship with our dad, and now the only kind of relationship that feels safe, not happy, not pleasant, no nothing, but the subconscious finds it safe because that is what is familiar. So we find toxic relationships because that is exactly that's exactly what we are familiar with, what we know. If I had had the type of background that made me familiar with violence, would I have become a violent person? Maybe, right? Can we even start at maybe? If I had been programmed in this and this and this and that way, could I have ended up being one of these people that I would call an absolutely horrible person? And fortunately for us, personal development work really helps us let go of a lot of the old patterns and the old safety and all of that, so we don't have to actually get out and just this is not about only just finding compassion for people that we consider horrible. It's the purpose is not finding the compassion. The purpose is, to what extent can we give up on judgment? Because if we can release our judgment towards someone where we're just like, this is the most horrible person on the planet, and I'm just not judging them, I understand why they became the most horrible person on the planet. I understand why they could have become the most horrible person on the planet. Then a lot of the judgment that we will find in our daily lives towards ourselves, towards other people, it gets replaced with, I get why, I understand, and it feels so much better internally to hold understanding. This is not even about them. It's not because they deserve our understanding. It feels better for us to meet someone with understanding than it does to meet them with judgment. And I know that there's like a part of us that loves the gossip, that loves and that feels really good, but it's just such a low vibration compared to once you sit with, I fully get why okay, now I understand. Now I understand why this person would do that. Now I understand they hurt me, but I'm not about to hurt them back. I'm not about to talk badly about them to other people. Because that's not the vibration that I want to tap into. I want to tap into, I can hold you hurting me because I know that you're hurting me because you're hurting inside yourself, right? I understand that you're only hurting me because you're in pain. And I'm not going to add to that pain. I don't want to do the whole eye for an eye thing. I don't feel like that's a high vibration. That's not the kind of person that I want to be. So I would look at people where I'm like, okay, this person really overstepped some boundaries. They did things that I would say is unforgivable. And this doesn't mean that you welcome people back into your life. You can absolutely still hold a boundary that says, I just cannot hold you in my life, but I'm not holding the anger against you. I'm not walking around with an anger towards you, but I'm still going to hold a boundary because my boundaries are still important. So looking at, all of these different things that we want to resist, all of these different versions of us that we don't want to recognize. Once we start recognizing them in other people, and once we start recognizing them in ourselves, that relationship actually starts to soften a lot. Because if we can look at the self-sabotage and the guilt and the hurt and all of this, and we can say, oh, I totally get you. I see that you're trying to protect me. I see that you're actually trying to just connect with me. I see that you just want to be seen and you haven't been seen. And so I've been pushing you away, and so now you're throwing this tantrum. I get it. I get it so much. And then you do it with your own self, and you start doing it with others. Now all of a sudden you can see other people's tantrums. You can see the little baby that's throwing a fit. And you can be like, I would really hope for you that one day you're able to do the work where you can see your own tantrums before they turn into adult tantrums that you're throwing on other people. Because if we don't do this work, if we don't do the integration work, what very often ends up happening is that we get triggered at some point, or we kind of jump through the barrier cracks, and then the toddler comes through, or the tantrum comes through, and now we're just spilling it all over somebody else. And then that other person has to deal with us in our tantrum, and then they get triggered, and then they get defensive, and then they throw things back at us, and now we're even more hurt, and now we're throwing it back at them again. And now we're just having this horrible interaction where both of our baby traumas are yelling and screaming at each other, but we can't hear the other person because all we want to do is just release, release, release the thing, right? Have you ever tried receiving negativity from someone who is just saying like, I'm just so happy to get this off my chest, but then they're bringing all of that off their chest? It's just like bile being thrown at you, and you can tell this probably doesn't even have anything to do with me, but we're still receiving it because this person is just throwing it at you. Have you ever tried that kind of situation? It's actually it's very uncomfortable. And yet, if you start seeing that this person is hurt from a million other things, and right now they're just throwing it at you and they feel better, I would say, first of all, if I wouldn't want to do that to another person because I desire to deal with my own stuff so that other people don't become the recipient of my unprocessed emotion. But when you are with someone and the toddler tantrum is just throwing bile at you, you can remove a bit of your defenses when you realize this person is really hurt and this person doesn't believe in their own power. A lot of people, when they feel comfortable just throwing stuff at you, it's because they believe that what they're saying is not important. And there's a part of them that thinks, I don't think I could ever hurt you. I don't think you could ever be hurt by me. I don't think that anything that I would say actually has impact. And that is an insecurities thing, right? But what they don't realize is that what they're saying is really hurtful. And you're just receiving all of this crap from them. And and in that situation, what you can do is that you can notice the defenses coming up. You can notice the desire to throw things back at them. And you can decide, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to see the baby tantrum for what it is. I'm not going to take this personally, right? And I know that a lot of people say that, oh, but with feedback, you should always look at whether there's truth to something. Someone throwing baby tantrum bile at you, that's not feedback. That's just someone throwing baby tantrum bile at you. So that's not the same as receiving feedback, right? Receiving feedback would be a calm conversation with someone saying, oh, this is my opinion, this is my experience, and you can receive it and be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry you felt that way. Let's see how we can change that. And so I ended up going a little bit all over the place, but I'm kind of hoping that this is giving the introduction to what can all of this shadow work really do? Why do we want to do it? Why is it important? How do we do it? And really that once we do this work and we become a more integrated self, a lot of people, they are scared that I have a plant next to me, so now I have baby flies sometimes. Sometimes when we're looking at, okay, but if we're going to integrate all of these nasty parts of ourselves, aren't we going to be more nasty people? And I would say it's actually the opposite. When we give room to the parts of ourselves that we usually refuse to look at, we integrate them and we work on them within ourselves, and then they don't end up showing up uninvited because they will break through. So we can still say, I still want to be this and that kind of person. I still want these and those parts of me to be what the world gets to experience. And then I can still deal with all of these things that are coming up. And I can look at, okay, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? And then doing that work of integration. And that doesn't mean I'm just going to let that version of me get a front seat in my identity and just start throwing bile at people. The bile throwing comes when we don't do the inner work. Because once we realize, why am I trying so hard to throw bile at this person? And then we do the work of figuring out why that is. And we're like, oh, okay, it's this and this and this and that. And now we're seeing it so clearly. And now we're seeing that part of us that we refused to look at before. And sometimes just seeing that releases the tension. Sometimes just seeing that releases the need to throw bile, because the reason that that part of us wanted to throw bile in the first place is because it was not seen. It was because we were never paying attention to it. It's because we refused to acknowledge this part of us. So sometimes you can just let it in and you can look at it, you can see it and say, okay, I fully see you. Thank you, actually, because I also see how you were trying to protect me. But we're going to act adult about this protection instead. Now we're going to take on the parenting role and say, well, this is how we're going to go forward. So yeah, I think this is really impactful work. It has done so much for me. There's still so much more to be done. There's still so much more to learn. But I always find it really interesting work to do because we get to know ourselves on a much deeper level. And our shadows, so the parts of us that we were refusing to see, those are the ones that we call shadows. Our shadows hold so much wisdom. They hold so many incredible things about ourselves that we didn't realize. And doing this work can be so impactful, not just for us, but also how we see other people, how we understand other people, and just removing that judgment and replacing it with curiosity. It's just not just for ourselves, but for others. So important work, such beautiful work. I hope you're gonna try it out. So if you're taking anything away from this, it is just really the questions that you allow yourself to ask yourself, which includes, what are you scared of, right? What are you trying to protect me from? What is it that you really want here? And then just listen to the answers and see what happens. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was important to you as it is to me. I hope you can use this for anything really. I hope to hear some of the feedback. I would love to hear, if you do this work, what happened, what came out of it. And I would love for anyone who's willing to share, to just share your experiences with it, share your thoughts, share if you have any questions. And then I wish you all a beautiful and lovely day. Thank you so much. Bye.